We are delighted that you're joining us for another podcast of Wake Up Aligned, and it is the podcast for chiropractors where we get to talk about chiropractic lifestyle, and topics of interest. You can contact us through our email, and that is mailbag@amcfamily.com.
Well, folks, welcome back to another episode of Wake Up Aligned. I'm Tom Owen. I'm your host for the day, and I've got a superstar in the studio with me. For those of you that have heard her before or ever heard her speak at conferences, you know there's a what is it they say? Still waters run deep. So she doesn't even like to talk, folks. But what's funny is the subject of the day is we're going to talk about communication today. And, you know, Dr. Lisa Beighle is in the house with me today, and she doesn't even like to talk, but she's master at communication, and she has a lot of depth to share with you. I'm just teasing with you, Dr. Lisa.
I know that.
Anyway, so folks, I'm excited to have her back. Those of you that have tuned into the shows where she's been before, you know this young lady has a lot to share. And anyway, I'll leave that to if you haven't done it and you have not heard her shows, go back in the queue, find them. I'm telling you, it was some of my all-time favorite shows that we've done over the years. But with that, we just wrapped up the May Summit in Atlanta, and my goodness, it was from the start. I mean, Thursday afternoon, like I came downstairs, and literally from the moment I came down, the energy was there. The crowd was palpable from Thursday afternoon on. We dove into some really deep subject matter wrapped around referrals. For those of you that are not making, and I'm talking to the AMC members for a moment, if you are not making it a priority to be there at 1:30 on Thursday afternoons, I'm telling you, you're missing it, because it's the only time that we've only got so much time in a weekend. We've only got so many weekends per year. I mean, there was years that we did 14 summits in 1 year, if you can believe that, Dr. Lisa. And now we're just doing 6. So we're cramming so much in, but that Thursday afternoon is the one spot where we have time to really unpack and dive deep into components that are basically the master. It's kind of the depth and genius, system mastery, referrals, especially referrals. Everybody's enjoying that. Patient compliance, those things that make practice enjoyable. Because if you don't know how to do that, you're not a master of that, then you're on the hamster wheel, constantly rotating through new patients, and you think it's all about those components. And there's nothing more exhausting than just to process new patients all the time and be on that hamster wheel. So Thursday afternoons, folks, and just the whole weekend in general, it was just amazing to hear the stories from the stage, the impact, the progress reports that were given from the stage. And just, I know what we did in Depth and Genius, we dove in, and of course we've been doing this all year, started in January. It took us the entire weekend to unpack consultation. We spoke about consultation the entire Depth and Genius in January. I joked with Dr. Osborne and it took us 4 hours to cover the first 4 minutes of a consultation. That's how deep the stuff is. And then we've worked our way through exam, first report, and of course, in Atlanta, May, we tackled second report, where everyone thinks that's where the mastery is, but the mastery is in consultation and first report. You're not getting a good acceptance rate. The odds are it's not in second report. More than likely, you're messing something up in that first and that consultation and that first report. I know, Dr. Lisa, you can add to that. But just overall, I was just blown away with the weekend.
Absolutely, Tom. Pleasure to be here again. The weekend was phenomenal. The family feel was there. The love in the room was there. Love for helping each other be successful, to help our communities. You're right. It was absolutely palpable. And when you talk about some honorable mentions from that weekend, I want to go ahead and throw out two here. The first one is Dr. Nicole Mathy. I've been coaching her for a little over a year now. She's absolutely a spectacular individual, and she's having some records in her life. She's overcome more than any one person should ever have to overcome. And she's broke 650 patient visits a month and has eclipsed $40,000 in collections. And I get a text every few days from her that's updating me where she's at for the month. And it looks like this month she's going to be over 50K. And she says to me, it's finally nice to have some extra and not just be working to pay my overhead. So I'm just super proud of her, not just for what she's done in her practice, but what she's also done in her personal lives and the struggles that she has overcome to get to this point. And I texted her back the other day and I said, the sky's the limit, and the only limit for her is within her own head. So I will keep working with her to expand her concepts, and she is going to be a guest on a future show here, and can't wait to interview her and tell the story and talk about her role within Aligned and how special she is in making an impact with other chiropractors. Another shout out is Dr. Lindsay Johnston. Been working with her now for quite a while, and I know she'll take this kind when I tell you she is a machine. She is a machine. The month of April, she spent a week in Ireland. She came back, had to let an employee go, fought COVID, still collected over $138,000 in the month of April. And that's chiropractic. That's not complementary medicine, lots of supplements, nutrition, things like that. Straight chiropractic. And just when you think, how can one person physically do any more? She breaks through another glass ceiling. And like Dr. Owen used to say, how high is high? Dr. Lindsay Johnston is expanding my concepts of how high is high when it comes to a one doctor office. So kudos to both of those doctors. And Dr. Lindsay will also be joining me in the future and how she's working with individuals within AMC Aligned.
Yeah, she in particular is just a rock star. I mean, I genuinely can say this in my mid-50s. I think I would pay my last dollar to have that kind of energy again. You know, when you called her a machine, she's just, and yet what's crazy is that she's having that kind of success. And what does she want to do?
Help more
people. Yep. She's volunteering for this and volunteering for that. And then you and I both know other people that we both know that don't have nearly what's going on in her life. They have a third of the activities, yet they can't find the time. They can't find the time to serve. They can't find the time to go the extra mile. So yeah, Dr. Lindsay, you said you go back for a while. I go back to when she was a student, and I remember her literally kind of growing up, per se, under Dr. Owen, my dad's wing. I mean, she was literally sat at his feet, and that greatness was put in her early, and she does, there's others that are like that. Dr. Amanda Austin is like that, you talk to them, I just don't know anything different. Dr. Owen, embedded in me greatness, and I'm just living up to that expectation. So, and I got one more while I've got the microphone, if I can, about the weekend.
Yes.
Was it not just awesome?
It was one of the best.
Well, okay, I'll give you that. The weekend was awesome, but I was going to say, wasn't it awesome to see all the new faces?
Yes.
I mean,
exciting.
I think we had 15 new members, of whether they had already come on board or they were there for the first time. We had 15 new faces, and they weren't all new faces to me. Dr. Sebastian Frazetta, just loved seeing him. It was exciting. He was a member, and he had doubled his practice way back in 2001, 2002, unplugged, The practice stayed right where it is. That's what self-sustaining referral-based practicing does, right? And now he's come back, and inside the first 6 weeks, he's already jumped up 20%. His practice already popped 20%. And I think he reported the last 11 out of 11 care plans accepted. So Sebastian Frazetta, there was just a lot of them. I was excited to see them, and that's what makes it fun. I've got my old favorites, but seeing the new faces and seeing it changing their lives so quickly, I just don't get tired of it.
Yes, and that success is available to anyone that wants to put in the work and the commitment. It's available.
Yeah, there's nothing special about, I don't mean to say there's nothing special about these people. There's nothing special about Nicole Mathy. There's nothing special about Lindsay. There's nothing special about Sebastian Frazetta. What I mean by it is that everybody has untapped potential. That's what potential is, listeners. Potential is nothing more than truth in waiting. You have untapped potential, and it's already true. You just have to start learning how to believe it, understand it, and then act upon it. And that's what mentoring is. That's what accountability is. That's what a system will give you predictable results. So listeners, if you're out there and you just keep, circling and you tune in and you listen, there's nothing special about these folks. They're just putting the work in, and they're just teachable. That's the two things that I could tell you. Like I said, I gave my age away a while ago. The really two biggest keys, components to success or growth in business. And I'm not talking about just chiropractic practice. I'm just talking about in general in life. One is staying teachable, staying humble, and then being willing to put in consistent effort, consistent work. Consistency and the attitude of humility or being teachable, you keep those two and you will remain green and growing, and you won't be ripe and rotting. So anyway, we could go on about the weekend, but I know you've got stuff that you're wanting to dive into for the show. So let's see where you want to take it.
Tom, I had an idea of where I wanted to take it until we started talking here. And so I'm going to talk about communication, but I'm going to change this just a little bit. I presented a whole class at the summit this past weekend on different types of communication, how you can improve those different types, and where you may fall short. But when Tom mentioned they spent 4 hours going over the first 4 minutes of the consultation, something comes to mind there immediately, and that is verbal and nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication is something that I've really had to learn how to pick up on, how to diffuse a situation, read people. But nonverbal communication, 55% of what we communicate is nonverbal. 38% is the words that we speak, and only 7% is the content. So what does that tell us? The more time you spend in a consultation, or the more time you spend in an R1, the less they're hearing. They're only hearing a very small part anyway, so why would we not want to focus in on some of the nonverbal things that happen within our system? And the first one is a handshake when you walk in the room. You have your palm turned up, and it's a submissive handshake. You don't have to say anything, but that says to the potential patient sitting there in the chair in front of you that you're here to serve them. They felt that without you saying any words. So you're starting the conversation with the patient, not speaking. And it follows into some of our other protocols also. When you talk to somebody, when you're talking to that patient, have you ever thought about just leaning across the desk a little bit and making eye contact? Both forms of nonverbal communication that will speak to the patient's innate. And that is 55% of what they hear, and you haven't said anything. So we need to pay attention to how we are projecting nonverbal communication as well as nonverbal communication coming from the patient. Is that patient sitting there in the seat across from you during your first consultation with their arms crossed? Are they making eye contact with you? What is that telling you without them speaking a single word? And how would you diffuse that? Tom, you got any comments on the consultation portion?
Well, yes, we can get into the nonverbal communication components because you're right. Body language and voice flexion have a whole lot more to do with communication than what's actually being said. I don't remember the percentage that you gave, but whatever that is, if you said 7% is actually content,
7%.
to that effect, well, I can tell you this, that only 10% of that 7% is being retained.
Absolutely.
Right? So you can ask somebody what a subluxation is, and you can give them the great big chiropractic idea all you want. 3 visits later, they'll call it a luxosub, right? So they don't retain, but they definitely, we're kind of getting right into it. People do not remember what is said to them, but they absolutely remember how you made them feel. So there is a feeling in the room. I can get down to nonverbal communication. You tapped in on some body language. You did handshake. Yeah, there's a difference, right? Grabbing a handshake straight up and down, firm handshake. That's me meeting somebody on a ball field, right? That's like, hey, we're mano to mano right here. Nice to meet you. Then there's the overpowering, there's the servant. But we haven't even talked about the stage. You're all actors on the stage of life, right? So to me, when I think of consultation, you bringing up a procedure here, and there's listeners out there that don't even realize that the consultation is the most important procedure in all aspects of any chiropractic office. I don't care your technique. I don't care if you never touch somebody, you never adjust them, you do nothing but nutrition. I can assure you the consultation is the most important. And a lot of you aren't even doing a true consultation, and much less if you are doing it. How many of you out there actually have a room that is set aside that's you in your office that's nothing else is done in that room except consultations? Why? Because it's that important to set the stage. A consultation room has a different feel than the treatment room or an exam x-ray room. If I go to my house, Dad used to say, you don't cook in the bathroom and you don't poop in the kitchen, right? There's a feeling in each room and you kind of already know what this room's for. Well, it's the same thing. Communication is a lot more than just body language, voice flexion. It's how you're dressed. What's the respect factors that are involved? Is your stage set? It's all speaking to the patient's innate. And there's a word out there that doesn't get used a lot anymore, innate. But make no mistake about it. People try chiropractors. Try chiropractic. They don't try chiropractors. And a lot of times you're going to get one shot at this to try chiropractic. And then if they walk in and their feelers are wide open, right? You were not their first choice. They come walking into an office that's disorganized. It doesn't flow right. It doesn't have the right feel. You're not, your dress does not give any authority or respect. There's so many different things that are talking to what you're talking about, communication. But I'm going to throw it back to you in just a second here, Dr. Lisa. But I want to go back to what you asked me. Is there anything about communication in general? And I would say all communication starts with a mindset.
Okay. Tell me more.
Communication goes into what am I doing? Why am I speaking? Why am I communicating? If I'm communicating, trying to convince you, my objective for the communication is to sell you. My objective is to puff me up and make me feel or sound important. Like I just want to tell everybody about chiropractic. Then the mindset is not servant It's not around the servant. The most important person in the world is the person sitting in front of you or standing in front of you, whether that's my wife at the time, if it's my kids, if it's a patient, or if it's a friend. If I go into that interaction, right? We've got Snacks in here with us today in the studio. If I start talking to Snacks and I just tell Snacks all about me, rather than taking interest in Snacks and getting to know Ryan, and my concern is about Ryan and my focus, he's got my undivided attention. How does that make Ryan feel? Right?
Special.
It makes him feel special, important, valued. What do you want in a doctor-patient relationship? So when you go, oh, I don't do all that. I'm not, my body language, voice flexion, I don't practice my procedures. It's just a consultation. I don't even do a consultation because I just love to treat my patients and treat them like friends and so on. Well, that's what you're communicating, and you're reaping those rewards or no rewards at all.
It's actually funny, everyone out there listening, because another form of nonverbal communication is hand gestures. And Tom is sitting here talking, and his hands are just moving, and they're emphasizing what he's saying, and it's very appropriate. But don't forget about hand gestures and how we use them. But yes, Tom, part of communication besides the nonverbal communication is being an active listener. Mm. We are all guilty of listening to somebody halfway because we're already forming our response in our head, or we're forming a question in our head, or we're trying to solve their problem without truly listening. So you've just dismissed them as not important because you're trying to figure all this stuff out in your head. There's nothing more powerful in a consultation than having the patient feel heard and that you understand what they're telling you. How do you do that? You actively listen, you engage, and you focus, you make eye contact, but more importantly, you can repeat back to them in a summarized form what they've just said to verify that you were listening. So active listening is just as important as nonverbal communication.
What you just covered is there's two critical components, and I didn't know we were going to get into consultation today. We were just going to talk about communication in general. But there's really, in doctor-patient relationship, it happens first in consultation. The two most critical components to a doctor-patient relationship is getting the patient to like you. I didn't say getting to be their friend, getting them to like you, because, look, I don't have time to teach this class on this show, but you either like somebody or you don't like somebody, and you are nuts, listeners, if you think somebody is going to come back to a place they don't like and a doctor they don't like 20, 30, 40 times, or certainly not a lifetime, right? So getting someone to like you, and then what you just hit on was, you said listening, right? Constructively listening, tuning in, not be thinking about the next question I'm asking. How does listening come across as communication? The communication that I'm conveying to the patient is the number one complaint in healthcare today.
Yes, it is.
Between a doctor-patient relationship is, it's not nobody spends enough time with me. That is not the complaint. So spending more time with the patient is not going to be the answer. It's not nobody listens to me. It's close, but the big one is nobody understands me. And what is nonverbal communication? Or just in general, what am I trying to communicate to this patient during this consultation? And as I move into the report of findings, right, I'm going to consistently convey to them, I heard you, and not only did I hear you, I understand where you're coming from. I understand you. And if I can convey that, how am I going to convey that? Do you think for a minute, folks, you're accomplishing those 2 points I just made, getting everyone to like you and getting everyone to know that you understand them? You are nuts if you think you're going to do that through a script. Okay? We're not talking about scripting here, man. If scripts were the answer, everybody would be successful. You could buy those online and you wouldn't have to, work on that. But that's not the way it is, because that's not what a relationship is. See, a doctor-patient relationship is just as important as the relationship with my kids, the relationship with my wife, right? There's a lot for me to have a successful marriage. I better not be really good at talking. I better be really good at what?
Listening.
Yes. Right? It's the same thing with the patient. They want to be heard. They want to buy, but they don't want to be sold, right? So they don't want to be convinced. They don't want anything shoved down their throat and pushed. That's where body language, voice flexion, we haven't even talked about it. Some of the verbal is just cadence. How do you say it? Voice flexion is, I remember we mentioned her earlier, Dr. Amanda Austin. Now, Dr. Amanda, I've known Dr. Amanda almost 30 years. And, when she came out of school and opened, she's 5'1", 110 pounds, got this tiny little voice. And I'm like, how are you going to get the big burly 6'5", 280 pound? Because she was practicing a Gonstead practitioner. And I said, Dr. Amanda, I said, learn this early. I said, speak slow and loud. Slow and loud. Now, what am I doing? She's going to say the exact same report of findings that I say. But if you want to have authority, how do you get authority out of 5'1", 110 pounds? Cadence, voice flexion, timing. That's part of communication.
Absolutely. And Tom, active listening has to be intentional. You really have to practice. You have to have it on the forefront of your mind when you are with your patients. If you are actively listening to a patient in the room for 3 to 5 minutes versus being in a room for 20 minutes and being distracted, which one of those situations does the patient feel better about? They feel better about that you were in tune with them, you were actively listening. And I'm going to tell you, if you polled people across the board, they would feel like you spent more time with them because you were focused on them the whole entire time. So every time you hit the doorknob before you walk in, the most important person is the person in front of you, and you have to have the intention to actively listen to what they're going to say. So
yeah, you just said doorknob. Doorknob makes me think the doorknob principle is,
yes.
Are you walking into the consultation? Doctors, do you walk into every interaction with a patient and you're seeing 50 patient visits or 80 patient visits a day? It's not 80 patient visits as a whole, it's 80 individuals. Do each one of them get your undivided attention? Do each one of them, if you had one bad experience with one patient, do you carry that through to the next 3 to 4 before you get it out of your system and you get back? No, that's what the doorknob principle is. It's reset the mindset that there's a lifetime chiropractic patient that will stay, pay, and refer, and I'm here to serve, right? Getting that mindset correct before you ever walked in there, because if you don't, I promise you, you're going to carry forward stuff from 2 to 3, 5, 10 visits earlier in the day, gets you off track. That's what the doorknob principle is. Have you ever walked into a house, Dr. Lisa, have you ever walked into a house where the husband and wife just had an argument?
Oh, yeah. Feel it immediately.
You feel it.
You feel
right?
it.
People are feeling all the time. And if you're not resetting that every visit, you got to remember, every visit is important. Every interaction with a patient is important. It's not 80 visits in a day. It's not 20 visits in a day. It's 20 individuals in a day. And I can get down to we haven't talked about numbers and finances and things of that nature, but if you miss, you get sometimes, what is it? You can get it right 15 times in a row, jack it up on the 16th, and you don't get another chance, right? So when somebody drops out for the wrong reason, and it was something that you carried forward because you were wrong, you were not in the right frame of mind, you were not communicating the right, the right message to that person. You weren't tuned in, you weren't listening. They tune in and they tune out. They heard, they felt it, they tune out, then they don't come back. They miss a few appointments. You know what? One missed appointment, and I'm actually taking stats out of the AMC family. Okay. Folks, I'm just going to talk about your practices. You know what? One missed appointment a day equals in a year? Statistical average is $22,000 of revenue a year.
Wow.
$22,000 of revenue a year. One missed appointment a day. Tally it up. You can do the math. It works out to that way. But yet we don't realize that we're shooting ourselves in the foot through the lack of communication. I want to go a different direction while I've got the mic, and then I'll throw it back to you. Communication. Communication is not always done in person.
Correct.
How about a thank you gram?
Written communication is one of my 5 types here.
Yeah, yes. Written communication. What are you communicating to that patient, to that person, right? Not a patient or a person. What are you communicating with a thank you gram? You're communicating appreciation. You're communicating value, and they're getting it from somebody they would never expect to get it from. They're getting it from their doctor. They're an authoritative figure, and they're realizing, wow, I got a handwritten note from my doctor. Where do you think that gets put? All right. And I've got friends that work up here in Dalton, Georgia, right? They work in the carpet mill. Let me just tell you, the carpet mill, they make decent money, but it's monotonous and they get no recognition whatsoever. I send a thank you gram to my friends or old patients up in Dalton. Guess where that thank you gram ends up?
Bulletin board?
It's going to end up on the front of their refrigerator.
Yeah.
Right? Because my doctor sent that to me. What are you communicating? Is a thank you gram about you?
Absolutely
Why
not.
are you giving the thank you gram? If you dare send a thank you gram or do any of these procedures because it's what's best for the case or the bottom line, you've jacked it all up. You're never going to convey authentic, there's not going to be authentic communication, or it's going to be the wrong authentic communication, right? You're never going to be a people person because you got to be sending that thank you gram for the right reason. I'll give you one more and I'll throw it back to you. How about a doctor's first call? How many out there make that a priority? What's a doctor's first call communicating?
Concern.
Seriousness, right? You're communicating what's the patient feeling through that effort, right? It's not about the statistics of whether or not that patient drops out and your collection ratio and everything. No. What are you communicating by doing that? And that's verbal. I mean, you're making a phone call, right? You can do that. You can do it through text, right? Today's world, you can not a doctor's first call, but you can communicate through text. There's a different way of communicating through text. How you structure your words gives a different feel. Has anybody listening ever gotten one of those texts that they'll say, well, I didn't mean that. That's not what I meant by that text. But you had a different feeling when you received that text, right? You read it one way. The person that sent it meant it a different way, but they communicated something to you, right? You ever get the text where they didn't mean to press send?
Sure. I think everybody's received one of those.
Right?
Yeah.
So communication is happening right now. I'm communicating through this, we're communicating through this vessel of a podcast. What's the purpose of this podcast? Am I doing this because I have nothing else to do? Am I doing this because there's some monetary reward for doing it? No, I'm doing it because I have a heart to serve and I'm trying to convey what I can. If it's valuable, if it's useful, if it inspires you, helps, empowers you in practice, that's my reward. That's my reward because I'm communicating care. Now, do I hope that you will in turn, I am hopeful of that through my authentic care and concern for the fellow chiropractor, I hope that you'll share that. I hope you spread the word and say, you know what? I know of a place. They have the system, they have the resources, they have the people, they have the culture, they have the services and tools, they have everything. Well, I'm hoping that you'll turn right around and share what I'm sharing and share it with your fellow chiropractor and say, hey, come home, come join this family. Because in the end, I do want, my purpose is to make a difference in as many people's lives as I possibly can. Because in the end, all that's left are the lives we've touched and to what extent they were changed. And you know what, Lisa, in all honesty, I'm at that point in my life where I'm realizing I've got more in my rearview mirror than I do in my windshield, right? So why am I doing it? Is that coming across this microphone?
Oh, I can totally feel it, Tom, sitting here across from you. And, I believe I've mentioned this before, but when you make patients feel special and loved and important, they typically do not go anywhere. But you know what? I may not be making a huge difference physically with that patient. Doing my best, I'm giving them 110%, but you can only do so much with what a patient brings to you. But they may be the best referrers because of how we love on them, how we make them feel, the emotional connection that they have with the office, and not just the doctor, but the staff.
Yep.
You have to make sure your staff is good at communicating because they see your staff before they see you.
Yeah, they see your staff a whole lot more than they'll ever see you.
Absolutely. So, this information is not just for the doctors. You need to spend time with your staff talking through nonverbal communication and are they actively listening on those phone calls? Or are they trying to do too much at one time? But are they being greeted with a smile when they come through the door? That is a nonverbal gesture that already makes somebody feel comfortable.
And what are they communicating? What is the conversations that are taking place throughout the office, right? Is it about, you can be friendly, but are the staff becoming friends and creating friends rather than being your administrators, right? They're your army when you're not in the room. What are you conveying? What's the message being said? I know you have patients. Don't you have patients over the years that sometimes they literally don't have an appointment and they just drop by because I just wanted to come by and see my favorite office. I wanted to see my favorite people. When you get the culture right, you'll have people just show up just to be in your environment, your atmosphere. Because if you're doing it right and you have that heart, you have the love, you have the service, you have that intent, you'll get on fire. As Dr. Oz always says, he said, you'll become on fire and people will come to watch you burn.
It's funny that you just said that, Tom. I have a patient, Miss Norma. She's been with me probably 18 years. So she's been with me when it was just me. And then when Melissa came on the first time, she's in her mid-80s. And every time she comes in, no matter how long she has to wait, she will wait to get a hug from Melissa also. She will wait till she's done with a massage. Sometimes that's 20 minutes. Sometimes that's 40 minutes. But I'll have to tag Melissa in the back and say, Miss Norma's here to get her hug. And she will literally sit there and wait. It's joyful. But AMC Aligned is not just here to teach the doctors about these communication styles and how to sharpen your skills with this. It's also a resource for your staff, the training we have here for your staff. And wouldn't you think it's important, their body language when they present a financial? And I know, Tom, that's probably a completely different podcast, but make sure you're not excluding your staff. Because as Dr. Owen would always say, you can have a superior doctor and a mediocre staff, and you're going to have a mediocre practice. You can take an average doctor and have a superior staff, and you're going to have a superior practice. So these are principles of life. Communication and learning to communicate effectively can be life-changing, and no one has it totally all the time. It's an ongoing process. You have to check yourself periodically. Was I a little short with that patient? Ooh, I think I was a little snippy this morning at home. So it's an ongoing process that we have to continually build up within ourselves and within others.
And I would say, don't beat yourself up, right? It's moment by moment. I'm coaching a doctor right now. He beats himself up. And I'm like, man, you need to stop with the striving for perfection. Okay. And nobody is going to communicate perfectly all the time. Now that's the topic of this show is communication, but just realize you're not going to be perfect at this. Nobody is. I'm not perfect at it, but you're always communicating. If your eyes are awake and you're engaged in this world, you're communicating. You could be communicating through social media. You're still putting something out there, you're communicating, but don't try to be perfect. Strive for excellence with it and work for that excellence. And you just mentioned that staff, right? And you're correct. It probably is a completely different podcast, but you know what? We can take stats statistically. If you keep enough stats and the right stats, we can look at the stats and say, Julie, who's doing the financials, she's having an issue, and we can switch out, use the exact same protocol, switch the person out and go in and get a completely different result. Now, how is that possible? Because you're communicating. If you go in there and you're communicating, the staff is not confident. The staff is not completely sold on, hey, if the Dr. Lisa recommended it, that's what you need, right? And we're not going to let finances get in the way of you getting what you need, right? If you go in there communicating weakness or you're dodgy or you're, hit and miss and you're uncertain, trust me, you're communicating weakness at a time that you cannot afford to communicate weakness, right? Doesn't matter what the stage is, you still have to be the actor on the stage of life. So you're absolutely correct about that. And I would be amiss to wrap this show up with, what's one of the best, I'm going to give everybody something just to start practicing this week. What's one of the best ways to take interest with the person across the table from you or in a room with you?
Put your cell phone down.
Yes.
Lean forward and make eye contact.
All right. Now, you're absolutely right. Body language, you just hit body language. You put the setting down, you made them feel, right? But what's the best thing that everybody can do to make sure that you are interested in the person across the table from you? How do you start a conversation? You ask a question.
Yes.
If somebody asks you a question, what's the best way to answer that question?
With a question.
With a question. Why are you asking that? Now, you asked me a question, Dr. Lisa, and I would say, well, Dr. Lisa, now why are you asking that? Right? Did you notice that I used body language, voice flexion, timing of my question, and then I asked a question, right? I'm taking interest in you and I'm wanting to understand what's behind that. What's behind that? The more questions that you can learn to ask, it's called the question principle. You have a better chance of conveying and communicating with your patients rather than always being preachy, right? They don't want to be sold. They want to buy, but if you're communicating in the form of questions, now you don't have to pepper them. Now you don't do that. Now I can do that. If you and I do a challenge on the question principle, we might do a whole show and see if we could do that. But it's not a challenge. It's not try to ask them 10 questions in a row, but it's the intent of that question. The fastest way to get and communicating care or concern is in a consultation. How does that consultation start? You introduce with the handshake, you come around, and when we're ready to get into the relationship, what's the first thing I'm going to ask that patient?
How can I help you today?
How can I help you today? In a slow, caring voice flexions up, eye to eye, leaning across that desk, pen down, hands folded, turning my ear to you. I'm listening. I'm tuned in. What am I saying to that patient? I've got 5 patients out in the waiting room to see me. I got another new patient waiting to come in here. I've got report of findings to complete. Heck, I've got to figure out how to send my daughter to college. I'm still working on that. But right now, my body language, my voice flexion is saying what? You're the most important person, and you've got my undivided attention. And I just asked you one of the most important questions you'll be asked in today. How can I help you today? They start talking. Now I'm communicating with, and we're not going to teach consultation anymore here, but the point is asking questions is one of the best ways to form communication. So,
well, Tom, we have covered quite a bit of stuff today
in a short amount of time.
Yes, we have, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, really. Is there anything else that you'd like to cover today before we sign off?
No, other than to remember, as long as you're awake and you're up, odds are you're communicating. You're communicating with others. You're even communicating with yourself, right? It's the self-talk that's going on inside your head. It's your affirmations. It's your body language. It's what you're whispering to yourself. It's all those self-doubts that you feed. That's all communication, right? And that's what affirmations, why are affirmations best in front of a mirror? Because you're communicating to the innate within through those eyes, right? The eyes are the windows to your soul. So don't forget that you're communicating if you're awake. In today's world, you're communicating. What do you have to say? You know, Dr. Owen has a poem. I encourage everybody to pick up his books. But there's one called The Mirror, and it says something to the effect of a mirror is nothing more than a piece of glass that it says nothing but if I pass, but if I stop as oft I do, a mirror is always a friend most true. And it basically says, who am I to see? What am I to see there? It is but myself that I see there. So just remember, you're communicating every time you walk by a mirror. You're communicating with your self-talk. You're communicating with yourself. What are you saying to yourself? So communication is a large subject that would take a whole lot more than one podcast to cover, but I'm glad we chose to park on it for a while today. Do you have anything else you want to say as we wrap it up?
I do not, Tom. Just always be a student in life. Continue learning.
And I'm going to wrap it up with that, with saying, folks, who needs to hear from you today? Your patients are waiting to hear from you today. Your staff is waiting to hear from you today. Your family is waiting to hear from you today. And I may challenge that your AMC family, your AMC mentor might be waiting to hear from you today. And I'm going to go one more. What chiropractor out there needs to hear from you today? And what do you have on your heart to share, and how would you convey it? How would you communicate it? I challenge you that, because somebody needs to hear what you have to say. With that, Dr. Lisa, I always enjoy our shows when you come on. Good stuff. Good stuff. With that, folks, I'm going to wrap it up for this episode. And I challenge you to have yourself a great week and decide, what are you going to communicate? It's your decision. It's your attitude that you're conveying this week. So convey something strong, give your heart, and serve great. Love and appreciate you. God bless.
Follow our show. You can share it with friends, of course, and we'd love for you to contact us at mailbag@amcfamily.com. In addition, you're always invited to attend or join us at a summit. Of course, registration is required. And we would love for you to check out the loads of free content we provide to social media every single week. Until next time.